Hi, this is JJ Gat. So I have not done an episode of Geneva Speaks after show because I haven't had my Polytech blog up and running, but I did want to give my dissection and analysis of a recent story, actually an exchange between CNN's Don Lemon and CNN commentator April Ryan before it leaves the news cycle. And essentially, the debate, it was the two of them were talking about.
So April, listen, the only black woman in the 2020 campaign is fielding questions about race. Oh no, I think you're not hearing what people are saying. The people who are saying is she black enough, that's bull, that's BS. But to want a distinction to say is she African American or is she black or is she whatever. There is nothing wrong with that. There is a difference between being African American and being black, but it's not saying
she is a black woman in America.
We are saying that no one is saying she's not black. Yeah. That should be enough. Listen, it is enough that she's a black woman.
We are not a monolith.
So what is wrong with asking someone who is of color or black, are they African American, are they Jamaican, or whatever it is, you're missing the point.
Go ahead, Doc.
That's a whole different conversation. Okay. That's a whole different conversation. People are asking you if you are of an African American, someone who came out of Jim Crow, out of American slavery. Are your descendants out of that? That's all I'm saying. And there's nothing wrong with saying, yes, I am, or no, I'm not, but I'm still a black
woman in America.
Absolutely.
It was the two of them were talking about Kamala Harris, who is a senator in the United States government and is running for the president of the United States for the 2020 presidential election. So Senator Kamala Harris is Indian and Jamaican parentage. Her mother is from India. Her father is an immigrant from Jamaica. They met in the United States, married, they divorced. She moved to Canada and then returned back to the United States to go to college at Howard University, which is a renowned black HBCU, historically black university. And then finally, while she was there, she pledged a traditional historically black sorority called Alpha Kappa Alpha, and since then she went on to become district attorney, and then she was DA, and then until running up for president, I guess. So anyway, so that's not what I'm talking about. So here's the deal. So in this discussion, Don Lemon was addressing, there's a group of people called American Descendants of Slaves. And they decided, and then there's also other factions of people who don't support her candidacy. And out of various reasons, a lot of the reasons are circulating around her blackness. And so during this segment, Don Lemon essentially was asking April Ryan to address the controversy. April Ryan was like, well, she's a black person. And Don Lemon was like, yeah, I recognize she's a black person, but you do realize that the people that are questioning her are questioning whether she's African American, not whether she's black enough, but whether or not she can be traditionally considered an African American. And April Ryan was like, of course. And so they went back and forth, and there's different schools of thoughts. Some people are saying Don Lemon came out smug and arrogant, and April Ryan seemed like she didn't understand or confused. But anyways, there's different schools of thoughts of people interpreting that exchange between the two of them. But I said, I wanted to address it and give my thoughts of why there's a confusion. So here we go, I'm gonna try it. So in the nutshell, the concept of blackness comes usually from descendants of being from Africa, or a country where there's dark-skinned people. There's dark-skinned people in India. There's dark-skinned people in Southern American countries. There's dark-skinned people in Africa, of course. And so there's dark-skinned people everywhere. However, the term black usually, for the most part, historically, around the world, usually refers to descendants of Africa. So Kamala Harris is a descendant of Africa by way of her Jamaican father's heritage lineage. So along that lineage, she has African heritage. And now that she's an American, because she was born in America, so you can't be president of the United States unless you're born in America. So she's born in America. And through being, she's American, so naturally she's African American by that definition alone. Now, the people who are American descendants of slavery, their definitions of African American varies. It's based on the fact that historically in America, the Africans that were brought to the United States, maybe in Virginia were the first ones, and the originally 13 colonies when they brought them in the 1600s, their history starts in the United States. It includes slavery, it includes segregation, it includes desegregation, it includes civil rights, and then up to where we are now when we're dealing with that group in terms of affirmative action. And in the future, when there's discussions, you ever see discussions, reparations, the reparations and even affirmative action, which is active now, are two mechanisms or institutions that have been created to, amongst many different reasons, redress, atone for, and essentially pay back or mea culpa from the United States government and other institutions for the fact that the government sanctioned the enslavement and then the government sanctioned discrimination and racism against a race of people for over for a certain amount of periods of years, over 300 years. So with that long history, affirmative action and reparations would be for those people, the direct descendants of African to United States slavery, that transatlantic slave trades, but the people that stopped the United States up to Napa, those descendants are the ones that are supposed to be the beneficiary of affirmative action and reparations. So what happens is you have the black people in the United States now whose ancestries do not include that lineage. I'm one, for example. My parents, I was born in Sierra Leone, West Africa. My parents are also from Sierra Leone, West Africa. So if someone looks at me, they will call me an African American, and by nature, yes, I am, because I'm an American citizen, even though I was born in Africa, so I'm African American. However, my history, my lineage does not include the same lineage as other African Americans whose lineage, when they trace them back, includes that slavery through current modern times. So for that reason, there is not, I don't want to say animosity, but there is people who want to form a distinction of the two. Not necessarily to create division, but just so in terms of recognizing that there is distinctions, there are differences. And so I think the ADOS, which is another term for the American Descendants of Slavery, a lot of their terms is that someone whose history and lineage includes our lineage are aware, cognizant, and will ally and advocate on behalf of and can see life through the lens of knowing that most of their perspective, not the Black Americans or African Americans or African American descendants of slaves have one unilateral monolithic viewpoint or vantage point. That's not what they're saying. They're just saying in terms of the culture, the history, the foods, that for the most part are similar and akin, and so people can relate on that basis. And then also in terms of going down the lines, we're talking about reparations and affirmative action, they're the ones who should be the beneficiary. The animosity, when there is animosity, it comes into play in terms of that group seem to not like the fact that a lot of affirmative action programs, for example, oftentimes are being taken advantage of by children of recent immigrants. So you got the Nigerian kids, you got the kids from Ghana, you got these Caribbean kids. Their parents come to the United States, bring them, they immigrate, or they immigrate, whatever. And so the folk, they live here, they have children here. So their children, even though they're born here, they're not necessarily the intended person when they create these programs to redress past wrongs. Those programs were intended to address past wrongs to those people. So while the Africans definitely, because they weren't even enslaved, but the Caribbeans, the Black people in the Caribbeans did not go through that history of the civil rights, the segregation, all that process. That's not part of their history. Even though they were slaves in their own country, what's being atoned for, they weren't included in it. They weren't part of it. Their ancestors weren't deprived, weren't detrimented by that process, that transatlantic slave trade as to America through now. So given that fact, there's a strong advocacy on that group. I don't want to speak for them because I'm not a member of them, but that, and if anyone sees this video and they're from that group, maybe you can clarify for me. So their whole thing is that the people who benefit from the programs and anyone who's advocated calls them that stuff should be looking out for their interests alone and would be aware of their interests and cognizant of their awareness. So they don't like it when someone who's not from that group claims to be an African American in traditional sense. So, and Kamala Harris, and I say Kamala, yeah.
Kamala.
It's not Kamala. I see people saying Kamala. It's Kamala, because her Indian mother, she grew up with an Indian mother, and if you go anywhere in India, if they see that word, they're gonna pronounce it Kamala. It's like, I'm Janaba, my sister is Hawa, and I have another sister is Adama. However, through school and through their friends, I have my sister's friends call her Hawa, or they say Geneva, or they call her Adama. No, those are not how you pronounce those names. So Kamala Harris did not claim to be an American descendant of slaves. She did not claim that. However, what happened was, when people see the ADOS community challenging her for various different reasons, they push back to say, yes, but she's black. And they're saying, yeah, she's black, but she's not black like us. And they're like, what do you mean? That's just division. What do you mean she's not black like us? You know, she is black. Her dad's, she has an African heritage, so she is African American. So that's where the two headbutting went. So April Ryan was on his corner saying she's black American, and you cannot deny her blackness, which no one is. And Don Lemon was saying, yes, that's true. However, can you acknowledge what these ADOS people are saying about the difference between what you're calling her? You're giving her identity. She didn't even mention that identity. And actually, as a matter of fact, when she was interviewed a while ago, when she first was, before she announced her candidacy, but while we kind of knew she was going to run, someone asked her, what does she consider herself? And she said, I consider myself American. And that turned a lot of people off. However, it should not, because as a biracial person who was raised by her mom for the most part in her most formative years, and acknowledges Indian culture and tradition, she shouldn't be forced to say she's Indian American, alone. That's not fair. And also, someone who was raised also in Jamaica, I'm sure she's connected to her Jamaican heritage as well. She shouldn't be forced to just say she's Jamaican American. And then also, she shouldn't be forced to say she's just black American, because that denies her Indian root. So in order to avoid the controversy, and I know some people are saying there's a political reason, she's trying to be like a Barack Obama, she doesn't have a black agenda, blah, 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 blah. I know that's true that they're saying that. But irrespective of all the things that people are saying reason why she didn't, I think that's the hard position that people who are biracial have to deal with, is having dual or tri, quattro, cinco levels of identities, and not wanting to reject anyone by acknowledging one alone. They're going to remove and reject the other one by nature of just mentioning one. And so maybe that is the reason why she chose to say she's an American. And plus, for the most part, no matter if she's Indian American, Jamaican American, black American, she has one identity that identifies across all three, and that's American. So that's why she said that. So anyway, so that's my takedown of it, or my assessment, or my diagnosis, or my dissection of that. And I see people just bashing Don Lemon as, saying, oh, Don Lemon's too aloof and he's not getting it, da-da-da. And I was like, no, it's not that simple. And and I don't see anyone saying anything bad about April Ryan. So April Ryan is not necessarily wrong what she was saying, but neither is Don Lemon. It just seems like there were just two perspectives they were crosshairs. Anyway, that's it. All right, I hope that was helpful. It's 11 minutes. Shinaba Speaks. I have a how-to channel, and this is not how-to. This is part of my political sort of stuff, so this is just in between. But I just want to get in on this before it goes away and not be a story anymore. Bye.